Okay, we are talking about lines. Lines are graphs that we are going to work on this week. We are going to graph using 3 different methods. You are allowed to graph whatever method you like the best. So our first method that we're going to talk about is we are going to graph using a table of values. Now, a line is made up of points. A line is made up of points. How many points are on a line? How many points are on a line? I think I heard it. Okay, we have to have 2 points to create a line. You are correct. We have to have 2 points to create a line, but there are infinitely many points on a line. Okay? A line goes on forever in both directions, so there's infinitely many points. So what I have done is I have just chosen 4 values. -1, 0, 1, and 2. So we are going to plug in X values to determine the Y value. That's what we're going to do, to determine the Y value. And once I have an X and a Y value, I have what is called an ordered pair. Now, if you look at my graph up here, my horizontal axis is my x-axis. My y-axis is my vertical axis. It goes up and down. Okay? My x and my y coordinate, that is my ordered pair that we're going to be finding. And this point right here, point 0, 0, is called my origin. And that's where I start. That's where I start. Okay, so the first thing that I'm going to do is I am going to take this -1, okay, and you could have picked -3 or -2. Okay, these are just the 4 values that I picked. I'm going to take the -1 and I am going to plug it in for the x. Do you see my x right here? That's what I'm going to put my -1 in for. So I am going to have y equals -1 plus 2. What is -1 plus 2? 1. So I'm going to take my x value, which is -1, and the y value I got when I plugged in -1, and that is my ordered pair, -1, 1. So when I plot my ordered pair, I go to the left first because my x value is what I'm talking about first. So the -1 is how far I go over on my x-axis. I go to the -1. The +1 is my y value, and that's how far I go up. So there is my ordered pair right there. I have graphed that point that corresponds with -1, 1. Okay? Now I've got 0. I'm going to plug 0 in for x. So I have y equals 0 plus 2. What is 0 plus 2? 2. So my ordered pair is 0, 2. So that means I stay on this y-axis. I'm starting at my origin. My 0 means I don't go left to right at all, that I go up 2. And so here is my next point right here. Okay? Now I'm going to plug in a y for my 1 for my x value. So I'm going to have y equals 1 plus 2. What is 1 plus 2? 3. So my ordered pair is 1, 3. So from my origin, I go to +1, and then I go up on my y value to +3. And then the last coordinate that I'm going to plug in for x is 2. So I have y equals 2 plus 2. What's 2 plus 2? 4. Good. So my ordered pair is 2, 4. So I go to the right 2 because that's my x coordinate. And I go up 4 because that's my y coordinate. And here is my line. Okay? And this is graphing a line using a table of values. Graphing a line using a table of values. Okay. Now, I want you to tell me what is happening right at that point right there and what is happening right here. Okay, so I have pointed to do 2 different points. So let's do the top one first. What is happening with my line right here? Okay, say that again.
It's intercepting the X and Y axis.
Excellent. It is intercepting the X and Y axis. So this top one, is that the Y axis or the X axis that it's intercepting? That first point that I pointed to. The Y axis. Excellent. So this right here is what we call our Y-intercept. Our Y-intercept. Okay? My Y-intercept is where my line crosses the Y-axis. Okay? So I am crossing the Y-axis. Now, the point for this right here, what's that point? What? Almost. Nope. 0, 2. Good, good, good. Your X value always comes first. He's got your back. You're good. 0, 2. What is the value of my X when my line is crossing the Y-axis? I'm only talking about this point right here. What's my X value?
Oh, 0.
0. Good, good. I'm only talking about this blue point. That's all I'm talking about. I am talking about this X value right there. So for my y-intercept is where my graph crosses the y-axis. And what's an important thing for you to know is X is equal to 0. X is equal to 0 at my y-intercept. Okay? Now we're going to start talking about this point right here in blue. If that is my y-intercept, what is the point I just did? Excellent, x-intercept. Okay, and by definition, that is where I cross. Excellent. I'm crossing the x-axis. Now, that point is -2, 0. That's the point, -2, 0. So what is my y value? Yes. So when I cross the x-axis, my y value is 0. Okay? So my y-intercept is when I cross the y-axis. My x value is 0. My x-intercept is when I cross the x-axis, and my y value is 0. So we are going to use this information to graph my line. Okay? We're going to use these definitions to graph a different line, but we're going to use it. Okay? Can I go off the screen? Okay. So we have determined that my x-intercept is where my graph crosses the x-axis. In order to find my x-intercept, I am going to plug 0 in for y. Okay? Because y was 0 when my line crossed the x-axis. So I'm going to take this point, 3x minus 2y equals 12. That's my line. And I am going to say 3x minus 2 times 0, I'm plugging 0 in for y, equals 12. Okay? 3x minus 2 times 0, negative 2 times 0 is just 0. So I have 3x equals 12. So what is my x value? X is 4. Okay, X is 4. Now, I want you to be careful here because when I am finding my x-intercept, what is my y value? 0. Okay, so what is my ordered pair for this x-intercept? What's my ordered pair right here? Good. Good. Keep that in mind. Okay, so my ordered pair is going to be 4, 0 for my x-intercept. For my y-intercept, I am going to plug 0 in for what? Good. So I'm going to plug 0 in for x. Okay, so I have 3 times 0 minus 2y equals 12. 3 times 0 is just 0. Be careful. What do some students drop? The negative. So I've got negative 2y equals 12. I'm going to divide both sides by negative 2. What's my y value? Excellent. Y equals negative 6. Now, my y value is negative 6. What's my x value? Good. Okay, so my ordered pair is 0, negative 6. Okay, that is this point right here is 0, negative 6. Now, the number one mistake that I get when I say, what are the intercepts to this graph? The number one thing that I get when students miss it is they take the x value, they take the y value, and they put it in an ordered pair. This right here is wrong. Okay, here's the point 4, negative 6. There's the point right there. Is it even on the graph? No. Okay? Students are like, oh, this is my x value. Here's my y value. I'm going to put it together in an ordered pair. That's not what you're doing. Your x-intercept is a completely different ordered pair from your y-intercept. This is the value for your x-intercept. That's the point. This is the point for your y-intercept. You do not put them together. You do not put them together. Okay? Is it okay if I move off this screen? Is it good? Okay. Now I'm going to talk about horizontal and vertical lines. Horizontal and vertical lines. A horizontal line is when every single value in your y is the same. So I have y equals negative 3. Okay, this is a horizontal line. What this means is that every single one of my y values is negative 3. And how many points do I have on a line?
2.
I have to have 2 to draw one, but how many points are on a line? Infinite. It goes on forever in both directions. So how many points have a value of negative 3 for their y coordinate?
4.
All of them. Infinite. It goes on forever in both directions. Now, my x values can be anything. Okay? My x values can be negative. My x values can be positive. My x values can be 0. Okay? They can be anything. Okay? But every single one of my y values is going to be negative 3. So when you're not sure if this is a vertical or a horizontal line, when you get y equals negative 3 and you're not sure, do a table of values, because y equals negative 3 means every single one of your y values is negative 3. So I've got negative 2, negative 3. Okay, then I have 0, negative 3, 2, negative 3, and 100, negative 3. So every single y value is going to be negative 3. It does not matter what my x values are because all y values are negative 3. So a table of values for this particular line is that every single one of them is negative 3. What is my y-intercept for this? What's my y-intercept?
0, -3.
Excellent, 0, -3. Okay, there it is right there. 0, -3. What's my x-intercept for this one? Where does it cross the x-axis? It does not. There is not an x-intercept. We are running parallel to the x-axis, so we don't cross it. Okay? Can I move off this? Is that okay? Okay. Now we're going to do a vertical line. A vertical line is when every single one of my x values is the same. What are every single one of my x values here? Negative 3. Okay? And I have infinitely many points on this line. So every single x value on this line is negative 3. What are my y values? Anything. Okay? They can be a negative number. They can be 0. They can be a positive number. They can be anything. But every single one of my x values is negative 3. So I've got negative 3, negative 2. I have negative 3, 0. I have negative 3, positive 2. And I've got negative 3, 100, which I can't draw on this graph. Okay? So for this one, all x values are negative 3. Okay? What is my x-intercept here? Good. Okay? My x-intercept here is negative 3, 0. What's my y-intercept? What's my y-intercept? There's no y-intercept. Okay? I do not cross the y-axis at any time. Okay. Now, we are going to talk about, can I move off the screen? We're good? Good. Okay. Now we are going to talk about likely the most popular thing in algebra. Okay? Adults remember y equals mx plus b when they have no idea what y equals mx plus b means. Okay? It's just something that you remember, y equals mx plus b. It is the most efficient way to graph a line. It isn't the only way to graph a line. It just really is the most efficient. You can use a table of values. You can use intercepts. You can use any of the methods. But I will say slope-intercept is typically the one that's used most. And it's the one that students remember. So, a couple of things that I want you to realize about this. In order to graph using slope-intercept form, your equation must be solved for y. Okay, so sometimes you've got to solve for y before you can graph it. Okay. Your m value is your slope. Okay. Your m value is your slope. It's always the coefficient that's with the x. It's always the coefficient that's with the x. It is rise over run. That means we go up or down first, then we go left or right, depending on the positive and the negatives. Okay, up, down, left, right. B is my y-intercept. B is my y-intercept. So, the very first thing that you do is you start at B. Okay, so you're going to identify what your y-intercept is, and that's where you're going to start. Then you are going to plot additional points. Okay, additional points using the slope. Okay? So we're going to start at B, and then we're going to plot additional points using the slope. So I'm going to draw a graph. Okay. Now, the graph that the equation that I'm going to graph is y equals negative x plus 4. Negative x plus 4. Our slope is the coefficient associated with the x. So what is associated with the x? What's the value in front of the x? Negative 1. Negative 1. So I'm going to put that in fraction form. So if I wanted to write negative 1 as a fraction, what would that be over? Positive 1. Okay? So that's my slope. My b value is what? 4. That is where I start. I start with my b value. My b value is my y-intercept. Okay? So I'm going to start at y equals 4. It's right there. I start with my y-intercept. Now, my slope means rise over run. You can think of that as up or down first, then left or right. What does the negative 1 mean? I'm going down how many? Just 1. I'm going down 1. That's what the negative means. Then I have positive 1. What do you think positive 1 means? Good, and we're going to the right one. So down 1 and to the right one. So here I go. Down 1 to the right one. Okay, how many times can I do that? Infinity many times. I can keep going. Okay, I probably would not do that infinity times, but I could. So here are my points. Okay. I have to do it once because I've got to have 2 points to create a line. So this is graphing using slope-intercept form of a line. May I go to the next screen? Okay. Here I have 3x minus 2y equals 12. I want to graph this using slope-intercept form, but I can't do that yet. What do I have to do first? Say it again. Good, I got to get the y by itself. So I'm going to solve for y. And we did this at the very beginning of the semester. So we're going to solve for y. So the first thing that I'm going to do is I am going to subtract 3x from both sides. Okay? When I subtract 3x from both sides, what am I left with? Negative 2y. Don't lose that negative. Some students forget about that negative. So I have negative 2y minus 3x plus 12. Now I need to get that y by itself. So what do I divide by? Excellent. I'm going to divide by negative 2 on both sides. And when I divide by negative 2 on the right-hand side, I'm dividing everything by negative 2. So I am left with y equals negative 3 over negative 2x plus 12 over negative 2. When I've got negative over a negative, what does that make that? Positive. So that's going to be 3 over 2x. 12 divided by negative 2 is excellent. Okay. Now I am going to graph my line using these points. Or using this information, not necessarily these points. Okay, I always start with my b. My b value is the constant. It does not have a coefficient with it. So my b value here is negative 6. Okay, I have to make sure I have solved for y. And I did. Okay, then I've got my b value is negative 6. This is my slope. My slope is 3 over 2. Okay, that means I go up 3. What does the 2 mean? Good, and then I'm going to go right twice. Where do I start? Negative 6, good. Here's negative 6 right here. Okay, I am going to go up 3 and to the right 2. Then I'm going to go up 3 and to the right 2. So here's a point, and here's a point. Okay? So I have graphed this using y equals mx plus b. Y equals mx plus b. Okay, is it okay if I go to the next screen? Okay. The last thing that we're going to talk about today is slope. You can find slope if you've got an equation of the line. You can also find slope if you've got two different points on a line. So what I have here is I've got really 4 different ways that you can think about slope. The triangle means change in. This means change in. Okay? So the triangle means change in y over change in x. That means we're going to subtract my y's, subtract y values, then we are going to subtract x values. Okay, that's what it means. Another way that students remember it is rise over run. Rise over run is your slope. I just talked to you about my top value is going up or down. My bottom value is going left or right. So it's up, down, left, right. This is a formula right here. Sometimes it confuses students, but all it means is we're subtracting our y values and we're subtracting our x values. You read that y sub 2 minus y sub 1 over x sub 2 minus x sub 1. That's how you read that. Okay? Now, I want to talk to you a little bit about the 4 different types of slope that we can have. Okay? Think about the stock market or a bank account. If I've got money and I get a slope that is moving in this direction, it's the bottom left to the top right, I am making money. I know that most of you do not have children, but when you go to the pediatrician's office, when your baby is first born, you want your baby to do what? When they weigh that baby, what do you want? What do you want that baby to be doing? You want it to be gaining weight. Okay? You want your baby to gain weight. So when we got a positive slope like this, the baby is gaining weight. Your money in the stock market is making money. Okay? Now, My negative slope is the opposite of that. Okay? My negative slope is the opposite of that. I am losing weight, or I am losing money in the stock market. Okay? It moves from the top left to the bottom right. That's what a negative slope looks like. Now, if I've got a negative slope of -3/2, the most dangerous thing, or the most common mistake, is students end up double compensating for the negative. Okay, so they move down 3 and then they move to the left 2. When they have done that, what have they turned it into? What's a negative over a negative? A positive. So be careful. Don't overcompensate for your negative. Okay? Don't make a negative slope a double negative slope, because then you've turned it into a positive slope. So be careful there. When I have a slope of 0, that is when I have a horizontal line. Okay? So this is y equals 2, and my slope would be 0 in the numerator. Okay? When I have a 0 slope, that means there is no change. I am not making money, but I'm not losing money. I am not gaining weight, but I am not losing weight. And your 0 is in the numerator. Okay? Numerator. That means there is no change. It is okay to have a 0 in numerator. It is okay. Okay? An undefined slope is when I have a vertical line. So a 0 slope is a horizontal line. So let me write that right there. Horizontal line. Okay? An undefined slope is a vertical line. Okay? This is if time stopped. That is a way to think about an undefined slope. Is time able to be stopped? I can't stop time. Okay? I can't stop time. It is undefined because you end up with a 0 in the denominator. Okay? 0 in denominator, and that is not allowed. Okay? You get a 0 in the denominator. It's not okay. Okay? So when you have a vertical line, you have a slope that's undefined. And 0 and undefined are not the same thing. So you definitely want to make sure you know the difference between a 0 slope and an undefined slope. Okay? Is it okay if I go to the next screen? Okay, here we go. So what we are going to do now is we are going to find the slope of these 2 points. We are going to find the slope of these 2 points. Okay? So I am going to do change in y over change in x. The other way that you can think about it is y sub 2 minus y sub 1 over x sub 2 minus x sub 1. That means I'm subtracting. Both of those means I'm subtracting my y values, then I'm subtracting my x values. So I am going to start with this point right here, 3, 2. What is my y value in 3, 2? 2. And I'm subtracting. So now I'm going to go to this point right here. What's my y value in -1, 1? Good. Now, because I started with this point with my y value, I've got to start with that same point for my x value. So in 3, 2, what's my x value? Good. And I am subtracting -1. Okay? So 2 minus 1 is 2. 3, no, it's not. 2 minus 1 is 1. 3 minus -1 is what? Good. Is this positive slope, negative slope? It's positive. So my slope would look like this. Okay, now, just for fun, just to show you, I'm going to start with this point first, and I'm going to do it again. Okay? So I'm going to do 1 minus 2. So I've got my 1 here, and then I've got my 2 there. So I'm subtracting y's. For my blue value, I started with the left-hand point first. So now I'm going to do my x value here. So I have -1 minus 3. 1 minus 2 is -1. -1 minus 3 is -4. What does -1 over -4 equal? Positive 1/4. So it does not matter which point you start with, as long as you start with the same point for y and the same point for x. As long as you start in the same point, you're fine. Okay? Can I move off this screen? Okay. We're going to do it again. 4, -2, -1, 5. I'm going to start with this point. I'm going to start with 1, or -1, 5. What's my y value in -1, 5? Good. What's my y value here? So I've got 5 minus -2. Okay, then I've got my -1. So I have -1 minus 4. Okay, what is 5 minus -2? It's positive 7. Good. -1 minus 4. -5. Now, if you are graphing a slope like this, okay, you can think of it as -7 over 5. So you've got your negative in front of your fraction. Or you can think of it as -7 over positive 5, where you've got your negative in the numerator. Or you can think of it as positive 7 over -5. In general, when we're solving equations, where do I tell you to deal with the negative? In the numerator. So I typically always encourage you to deal with it in the numerator, like this right here. Okay? But all 3 of these are correct. What it does not mean, -7 over -5. -7 over -5 is what? Positive slope. Okay? So be careful there. Don't overcompensate with your negative. Okay, look at this one. What do you notice about this particular set of points? Okay, 2 negatives.
Y is the same.
3 negatives. I heard it. Y is the same. Y is the same. So we got to see what happens when y is the same. It's 0. Good. That's what's going to happen. So I'm going to start with this point right here. So I'm going to have -3 minus -3. I've still got to do my denominator because I cannot have 0 in the denominator. So I've got to make sure. So I'm starting here because that's the point I started with. -3 minus 2. So -3 minus -3. That gives me a 0 in the numerator. Then I've got a -5 in the denominator. Is a 0 in the numerator okay? Yes. So my 0, my slope here is 0. This is a horizontal line. You aren't asked to graph it, but this is a horizontal line. You have a 0 slope. Okay? Now, for our next one, what is the same? The x's are the same. So for this one, I'm going to have 8 minus negative 3 over 5 minus 5. I get 11 in the numerator, but what do I get in the denominator? 0. You are not allowed to have a 0 in the denominator. And when you do have a 0 in the denominator, that means this is undefined. It means time has stopped. And that is not allowed. So this is a vertical line. A vertical line. Okay? Can I move off this screen? Okay, and this screen you've already seen. I just wanted to comment about your test that's on December 4th. I will have practice tests up before I leave tomorrow. I'll have practice tests up before I leave tomorrow. Okay? Have a wonderful